So I'm here to invite you into a somewhat different world and context than you've been hearing so far. I love cross-pollination, listening to all these lectures this morning, these thoughts. I mean, yeah, like Bob, I'm just like, I want to talk to you. Can we just? So I want to. It's great that I can share my world a little bit, and then I hope that they spark conversations. I'm here to build connections. So. I'll just give you a little overview of what I'm going to do here. Just a little bit about me. I'm here and my work in reaching hard-to-reach teens, especially hard-to-reach populations. Some failures that I personally have experienced and I've witnessed in my field. A lot of things we're doing wrong, and then my thoughts on about how to address those, and a few just final take-home points. So. The long story short of this slide is essentially that I started as a dropout. I dropped out of high school. I got a job as a startup when I was 15, 16, and doing computer-based graphics stuff, and I never looked back. I just went hard for years, and I was just burning with passion. I still am, but not in the same way I was when I was a teenager. And it was an amazing experience. I just paralleled all my friends who went to liberal arts universities and we got PhDs and things, and yeah, very much high road and low road kind of feeling. But I found my own kind of way of having success. Credits on hit commercial products felt satisfying. I wrote a book because my family writes books, and I felt inadequate until I'd written a book. So it's really the large part of that. And then somewhere in the mid-90s, I got bored because I'd ridden this amazing wave when 3D graphics became part of video games. From Sega Genesis to 3DO and to PlayStation, there was this huge shift in the way games are built, and it's a technological shift that affected the experience. And I was very lucky to be part of it, and just happened to have the expertise needed to facilitate that shift. And once that shift happened, I was sort of like, okay, clearly my job is to put myself out of work and make better tools, so no one needs this kind of weird expertise. I worked in mobile phones, which I still believe are one of the most profoundly transformative technologies that have ever hit us in our lifetime. Like, blows away video games and everything else. I'm just like, wow, this is a very meaningful technology. Very personally meaningful. The personal connections that mobile phones bring excite me to no end. And I got wrapped up in toys, which is kind of the other end of the spectrum, where I'm like, I'm not sure how meaningful this product really is, but it is interesting tech and it's a very interesting problem. So from there, I stumbled into this job as a lecturer in games art and design. I was trying to hire game artists, and I couldn't find any who had been trained properly. And I went and talked to the university and said, what are you guys doing? How can I help you graduate people I can hire? And they said, would you like a job doing that? Because we would really like help. And I'm like, well, actually, my company's about to fail, so yes, thank you. I was working for a startup that was falling over in Australia, where there's very little game industry in the part I was in. And so they said, that's fine, but you do have to get some kind of degree if you want to be associated with the university. I'm like, okay, I'm in my 30s, maybe I could handle that. So I ended up on this journey that took me to a PhD in learning game design and became a born-again researcher. I saw the light. I was like, what the heck have I been doing my whole life? This is awesome. I could happily do another PhD straight on the back of that one if I could just find the resource. I just was in heaven. I'm like, you mean I can just go as deep as I want until I do something no one else has done, as long as I properly document that it hasn't actually been done? Oh my God, this is awesome. So the thing is, though, I did quit. I left university because I was unhappy with a lot of the teaching. I found profoundly frustrating because I'm such a weird learner, right? And my path is so weird. I just couldn't understand what the students wanted. I don't get it. I don't learn well in classrooms. I need to build things. I make things. And so I also saw that in research, I was very rarely allowed to build the great things we were coming up with. And I could raise money from my faculty to fund other people to build the great. I'm like, it's not, no. They can't do it until, it's a doing thing. And I looked into action research and things, and it just wasn't very viable in my university's culture. So I quit. And I moved back here to Oakland, and designer researcher is what I call myself now. So I'm not going to run down these people, but I'm working with a lot of psychologists and interesting people who help me, are subject matter experts, but they're more than that. We are collaborators. We are all designers, okay? So I'm a glue roll. I glue together these various expertise. Another important part of my gluing is outreach partners. And these lists are people, I hope there's people in this room who say, that's what I'm looking for, these connections. So these are great connections that I have so far, and we're doing great projects, but I'm looking for more ways to partner with people who have the reach and the need. So please contact me if that's you or you know who that is. I guess the kind of headline summary of how I see myself and what I have of value is bringing lab efficacy and field effectiveness, bridging that, what seems like why it works in the lab, we're getting results, why can't we make this scale, right? Why can't we roll this out as an app? And that just failure after failure after failure of making that gap. And that's what I just go, ooh, I know, I want to help. I get really excited about that. So it's also quite personal for me. It's very much a mission. Like, I've worked in commercial games for years, and most of my friends are still there and building fun stuff. It's fun to play a game, and that's just never been enough for me. So, these are the sort of things that I want to do. And specifically, the bottom one is kind of a weird one. The other two are like, oh yeah, okay, he's a do-gooder. But outcompete. So what I mean by that is beating things like Baby Einstein, right? Why is Baby Einstein successful? And why aren't better products that actually work successful? That's immensely frustrating for me, right? And like, we have everything they have, plus efficacy. Like, hello, why? So I think I have answers. It's still a journey, I'm not sure, but that is one of my missions. It's just to beat them at their own game. Like, yep, you're good at that, and so are we. And we have this. So anyway, okay, little breathe. Little change of pace here. I'm now going to talk to you briefly about hard to reach teens, as though I was a sociologist. I'm not. I'm a game designer. But one of the beautiful things about being a designer is I'm a glue roll. I know a little bit about everything, right? And I know just enough to be really dangerous. So if some of you kind of clench your teeth during certain moments, I apologize. Please correct me. So one of the things that I know from many different sources is that teens game a lot, okay? So this is kind of a truth that some people question these things, but if you look at like household income under 30,000, 70% of those teens play games on a regular basis. So unlike the sources from my industry, this is actually a reasonably credible source. So these studies are, relatively unbiased. They also, these people critique games as well. So boys game a ton, 84% of all boys game. They game at every age. Educated or not, urban or not. And this is a more, maybe less clearly recognized situation, which is that online gaming is an important part of socialization, and it has very pro-social benefits. So we hear a lot about toxic gaming culture online. That is a popular conception, and some of that happens, but a lot of that doesn't happen too. And so if you think of it's easy to understand if you think about the way teens play sports. You hear a lot of slag talk and yelling when they play basketball. You see a lot of anger and aggression and frustration. And some of that's genuine and some of that's play. And then a play context allows for strange, novel combinations of emotional expression that are self-regulated and scaffolded to healthy emotional reactions to difficult, challenging moments. Okay, so a lot of what the external people see, if you walk by a basketball game in an urban center and you see two guys going at it, like, what the hell did you do that for? You're just like, whoa, is a fight about to break out, right? I can't tell what's going on here. And online, it's even worse because it's all documented in text, right? It's like transcripts of that stuff would sound horrible on a basketball court. That's exactly what happens online with, So you got to take that stuff with a grain of salt, and you've got to look at, better studies that show you that actually there are good things as well as bad things, and a lot of good things. Okay, and also there's a huge fear. I'm addressing myths, right? I mean, you probably picked that up, but I'm addressing myths here around misconceptions of people that bring to my field. One of which is that, oh, they spend pretty much all day in gaming. Not really. They spend a lot more time watching TV than playing games. They do spend time playing games. Here you can see games and computer use for leisure is 1.5 hours out of their, I don't see the circle there. So I'm not going to say those are hours. Those might just be some other unit. But at any rate, you can see it's a lot less than TV. And that in a typical teen's high school student's day, leisure in general, including sports, is a small percentage. So they're not sitting around 8 hours a day gaming, typically. They have access. even very low income, marginal populations have access. And they have access to laptop and desktop computers, gaming consoles, and smartphones. And everything else falls away quickly. I don't know a lot about non-USA populations, or I should say non-English speaking, first world, Western culture. What was that great acronym we just saw? That was great. Yes, those people, that's who I mainly focus on, because I don't claim to have the cultural expertise to handle, say, Africa. So I can only cite like really nice, clear numbers, and I would love to work in that population. I haven't had the opportunity yet, so I hope to someday. Not specifically Africa, but anywhere except for my home turf. So. Yeah, so you can see that cell phone growth has exploded, and that smartphone growth is not where we are, 64%. They're way down, but they're coming fast. And I know from the cost dropping in, especially Android, it won't be long before smartphones are clearly the right platform to reach enormous, vast populations. What we do with that reach is totally questionable, and I'm glad that got brought up earlier, but the opportunity is there. I really like Dana Boyd. You guys, anyone hear of her? Sociologist, really interesting woman. She wrote this book where she basically just studied how network teens use the tech and why they use the tech and the implications. It's a great book. The title refers to one of the 3 choices you have for relationship status in Facebook. Single, not single, or it's complicated, right? It's such a great phrase. I so admire her just for naming the book alone. It's a great name. But anyway, I think one of the key points that gets lost when people read the book is this one, and this affects my work a lot. How tech is being used by teens because it's how they can get together. They are losing their ability to interact in real-world conventional ways that I grew up with. So I had a car when I was 15, and I could drive anywhere I wanted in town. My parents were like, oh yeah, he's gone. He'll be back, I don't know, maybe tomorrow, whatever. It was fine. It wasn't, and it's not just my parents were slack, although they were. All my friends had that same kind of freedom. It was a social norm. That norm is gone today. Like, you do not let your 15-year-old wander off and maybe come back tomorrow. You are an irresponsible parent if you're letting that happen, on average, right? So this is a big shift. This has radically changed the way teens interact socially. They are being forced to find other ways to interact. Yes, they love being online. Yeah, it's not that they're, oh, I wish but they kind of are in some ways. And she documents that well in this book. So, yeah. So online, the picture is different. Okay, so a key point here is more alone than ever. Okay, so teens are getting less. They're getting starved for social interaction due to weird way our Western world works. Not starved, but definitely reduced compared to how it used to be. But they have this opening online. And so you can see that the percent of teens who regularly spend time with their closest friend in the following location, the third spot is online, right? Not really that surprising, but it beats out neighborhood, beats out sports, beats out, religion, job, everything else. So percent of teens who have made a number of friends online, 30% have made more than 5 friends online. So it's not just hanging out with the people they know. They are finding new people this way, right? So that's exciting. That's a good thing, right? They have found a new way to compensate for some of the weaknesses that they've experienced. So, there's a million things you could do with this. I'm particularly interested right now in internalizing males. I think that population in particular is super hard to reach. They don't reach out for help in any way, and we are just they're just like this dark matter of psychology. They're just out there. We know they're there. You can never find them until things have gone way wrong, right? So preventative treatment for that population, if you can get in there and open some doors. It's also a population I belong to. It's my tribe. I grew up, I was that teen. And when I came to these opportunities, I thought to myself, what would have reached me then? What would have helped me 20 years later? What would have helped the teen Josh, And there were a lot of things that I was just ignorant. I didn't know, and I never reached out. And I could have saved myself a lot of grief if I had known. So video games was one of the ways that came to me. So finding the fun in evidence-based treatments, I'll talk more about that in a minute. It's just a general approach to dealing with a common failure point. And particularly reducing social isolations, you can probably guess from the previous slides. I'm especially interested in the father-teen bond. I think there's a really interesting opportunity there, especially with video games. But peer as well. I think there's good stuff there to be had. All right. So that all sounds nice and noble. Let's talk about let's get right down into the bloody, limb-strewn trenches of game development for health. So here we have a project I recently worked on. There's stakeholders, there's designers and developers, and there's kind of our customer, our outreach, and then there's the team. That's sort of the picture. This game attempted to address a failure to engage foster agencies in getting kids ready to age out. Okay, foster teens are like almost in jail. They grow up very institutionalized, ones that stay in group homes. They are nothing like normal teen development. They don't have a father figure. They have these rule makers, these administrators, and then they're set free, and half of them go straight to jail. If you remember the beginning of Cool Hand Luke, do you remember the opening scene? He's blind drunk, cutting the tops off of parking meters to get the quarters. He's doing it on purpose to go back to jail because he just got out of the army and he can't cope with the reality. That's these teens. Okay, half of them go to jail. It's horrible. And so we're like, so there's lots of courses. They're like how to manage a checkbook and how to, rent an apartment, what leases look like. And they're like, whatever, am I done yet? There's the total failure of education. This is very much resonating with some of the points Bob was making. So we're like, okay, so that doesn't work. E-learning doesn't work. It's not an e-learning classroom situation. We tried both. They both don't work. They just don't care because it's too soon, and they discount their future so crazily that there's whatever. That's later. So we tried to get them engaged, and we wanted to practice independent living and imagine their future realistically. We wanted to have them ask hard questions and get them to say, man, my friend would never stuff drugs under my bed. Would he? Oh, I don't think he would. Shit, maybe he would. Like that uncertainty, that realistic uncertainty, not terrified, not overconfident, just uncertain about their future. And then they are interested in hearing about ways to protect themselves. What are their, that was sort of our theory. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to actually show you the game or go into what its design was, but I just want to talk really about our failure and efficacy. So great idea, interesting theory. We did this very thorough, reasonably thorough by our standard study, where we had 120 at-risk youth in a residential trades center. So they live on site and they work there, and they are being educated left, right, and center in a very intense way. And you can see we had two controls. One was a commercial game, this Temple Run, and the other one is an e-learning program, and then our game, right? And we did pre-post, and we also have follow-ups which are ongoing. And we use valid, reliable instruments that are familiar from traditional psychology. Like, this wasn't innovative on the methods particularly.
I'm sorry, can you just
Yep,
that and
sure.
say, what was it that you were testing?
Good question. I'll show you. The next slide shows you. So basically, we were testing, did they change? There's a theory called stages of change, Prochaska's theory. It basically it says that people in pre-contemplation are not able to handle a plan. If you're not interested, you don't care about how to balance your checkbook because you're not even interested yet. So that's pre-contemplation. Then the first thing you have to do is move them to contemplation to make them thinking about making a plan. Then you move to planning, then to action. And so it came out of AA. He studied what worked in Alcoholics Anonymous trainings, and he developed this theory. And we're like, yeah, that's what we're doing. That's a great fit. So we took that theory and we said, we'll try to move them from pre-contemplation to contemplation. That's what this game's going to try to do. We're also going to look for changes in self-efficacy and life's actual skills, right? Which wasn't actually our primary aim, but we did have some of that in there. So, so we're currently doing it. But the main point is we didn't get any effect. There's no change in that we could measure. And, that really hurt. We invested a lot of energy in this thing, and we got no short-term effect. And maybe we'll see something in the 3-month, 6-month, 12-month ongoing follow-ups with these kids, possibly. But still, you got to ask yourself why, right? Well, one of the things we did wrong, I think, is we got the wrong population. These kids are already in a very intensive intervention. To expect a game to bump them in this, it's just this floor was way too high for our thing. The kids were too old. This was aimed at younger, 13 to 16, before they have gone out. These kids were 18 plus, almost all of them, 18 to 25. So not even calling them kids is fair. I think our theoretical framework was weak. I think that stage of change was probably the wrong frame to use for what we were doing, and that expecting a change in that outcome was a mistake. It was just, poorly done in that way, and too ambitious. I even questioned the audacity of trying to to build engagement in this sort of forced way, right? I don't know if that's even a valid use of a game or any. I don't know if that's possible at all, what they're trying to do there, So, these are hard things, and there's reasons why each of those was, one of those choices was made at the time. And now, in benefit of hindsight, we can say, oh, no, that's the wrong population. The population one, for example, is driven by NIH and the requirement for rigor. They would rather have us precisely measure the wrong population than roughly estimate with the right population. That is more valuable to them that we have 120 subjects than that we have the right subjects. They reward us when we tell them we have 120 subjects. I'm like, that's wrong. That's broken. There's a number of other things about the fit between how NIH sees the research we do and what is actually effective, right? And I'll go on all day on that, but I won't. I want to instead just point to some interesting alternative models. So commercial video games have a similar problem. They have to produce something that is intensely engaging and that has a measurable outcome. You buy it. And we have evolved a lot of interesting methods. This one is, it's a little bit like the discovery, the sort of look at the data, the small data thing you were talking about. It's a relative. It's not the same. Yeah, but it's definitely related. So with this model, you build a bunch of prototypes and you kill them as soon as you can, right? You just say, okay, 1 week in, this thing is clearly just not working, right? The trick, of course, is clearly. How do you know if it's not working, right? So, with games, we have a bunch of different engagement measures. We can see it. It's much easier when you're just doing engagement. But anyway, it's still an interesting model, right? Pursue lots of things quickly, kill them as fast as you can, let the other ones evolve, but keep killing them. If you get to stage 3 and it fails, you're done. It's out, right? And if that means you have nothing, okay, keep going. At least we didn't waste $2 million finding out we have nothing. So.
Would it be a way to look at the delta in a more continuous way? So rather than testing people to see if they jump from A to B, see if they stay in A. And if they're not in A anymore, maybe they're on their way to B. But
yes.
if you look a level too high, kind of see if they still stay in that A group that was your original recruiter.
Yes, exactly. See that? Yes, there's many clear, correct, better ways to do this than than build a big game and test it, right? Like it's like drug discovery. How much more quickly and cheaply can we see if we're heading in the right direction roughly, right? And commercial games do this all the time. There's an example. It's exactly right. So that first ring there is like, it's on paper. We haven't built anything. Does this look interesting to you as an audience? They're like, nah, I don't really like those characters. Okay, out they go, So yes, fail early, fail often. That's exactly what, rapid prototypes invite. But rapid evaluation. So prototyping, sure, but rapid evaluation is, I'm currently working on a project that is doing exactly that. And it's really hard for the psychologists. They're really struggling because they can't accurately measure. I don't need accurate. I just need vague. I need the big effects, the big significant effects. If it's not big, I don't care. I know you can't measure it. I just need order of magnitude. If it's not 10x better, then that's useful information for me at this stage. So that's a struggle, and I can tell you more about that project, but. Let me just tell you what I feel like I know. Maybe know is a strong word because I'm a designer. Design is not science. It's a different thing. We iterate, we test. It's probably more akin to art than science, but it has some science in it. So what does work? So I'm going to tell you about 2 apps. So now I'm talking about intervention designers who are found something that works in the lab, and they want to take it to the world, right? This is a very typical approach. This is what they will present to the world. Something where they are touting the efficacy, and they're making something that they think might appeal, okay? They have a shot at it. This has a whole suite of apps about various kinds of phobias and desensitizations, and all of them together were downloaded 20,000 times. This is a game that is a puzzle game that is mysterious and spooky and scary. And that's its primary vision, is this one of evoking an emotion, right? That's what most games do. And this was downloaded between, I don't know, 1 million and 5 million times for $1 each. So there is absolutely no doubt that the audience prefers this. It's entertainment. So how could you compare them? But I bet you I could modify this game to include that spider phobia treatment very easily, okay? So which is the harder problem, right? So these people have solved the wrong problem. They thought that the hard problem was the efficacy. And then they hand wave this part. They're like, yeah, just get it out there. You know, it'll be obvious. People, it works. It works. And, you know, and yet that didn't work, okay? So assuming users value utility more than engagement. They don't. They don't. They don't value utility because they can't assess it, okay? So from a designer's perspective, if you're a medical researcher and you see an opportunity like this, you tend to focus on motivation, that utility is a local minimum. What I mean by that is there are much bigger picture reasons people do things, especially download apps, than utility. Much more important. And that's really hard to get your head around when you're a medical researcher and you've just discovered something that would actually make people better. So this question here, it seems like a no-brainer, but it is totally up in the air. It is very unclear whether or not teen patients would take a pill daily if it made them slightly nauseous to save their lives. That cost benefit is unclear to a teen. Okay, they discount future rewards massively. So, you know, this is, if they self-report, they did an intervention that made them better, they won't go do it again. And you may think that may be kind of an other framing, like what's wrong with these teens? I don't do that. Yoga makes me feel better. I don't do yoga. I don't know why I don't do yoga. I don't know. I mean, every time I do it, I'm like, wow, I feel great. I feel relaxed. And I'm like, meh. It's just not, it doesn't, you know, something is broken in that math. So my job, my self-imposed job is to fix that. Is to align that maximum, that global minimum. You know, what is it that I really want, you know? For me, it's soccer. I love soccer. I drive myself to insane lengths to hurt my body because I enjoy it so much, right? And you know, luckily, as a side benefit, it keeps me fit. I mean, that's just total coincidence. What I love is something more important, all right? So, again, this is a really key point that most medical researchers miss. So I'm going to hit another angle here. You cannot just add fun to utility framework. Okay, if your basic framing for your product is this thing is going to save lives, you cannot add fun to that framework. You have to rip back that framework and start again from the thing that matters to your customer, and then get it in there. Then get in the thing that really will help them, despite them, okay? So chocolate-covered broccoli is the metaphor we use in our field. You can't put chocolate on broccoli and make broccoli better. It actually is worse for both the chocolate and the broccoli. But what you can do, and this is counterintuitive, but you can get kids to just eat broccoli because broccoli is good. And broccoli is famous for being bad. All through our media, we see kids frowning at broccoli. That is not reality. If you put broccoli in front of most modern kids, they will eat it voluntarily. And they will choose it over some junk food because it actually tastes better if you cook it right. So that is a great, here's another example, golf, okay? So here we have two different pairs of people. One pair has started from the premise of teach me golf, okay? He's gone with a friend or an instructor and he's like, I want to learn how to swing properly, right? That's a utility framing, right? I want to learn skills. I'll have fun later, but right now I want to learn skills, okay? If you can ever get your population in that zone, great, you win. Like, do your normal thing, right? Do the thing that makes sense. This is rare, especially on the App Store, right? And any sort of entertainment-based thing. So the other one wants fun, and learning happens along the way. Okay? That is achievable. That is something users will go find and accept, okay? So those products that are based on that premise are mostly fun, and the message is a small part. There's a video called Dumb Ways to Guide. It's had 100 million views on YouTube, okay? This was a train safety message put out in reverse, in response to the ones where everybody's got their arm cut off, say, oh, I wish I hadn't looked at the train. Fear-based marketing around like, don't stand on the tracks, you idiots, right? You can just see this frustration in the designers of these outreach campaigns. Like, what is wrong with people? Why do they sit on tracks? Like, look, your leg gets cut off. I don't know how much more I can make this. This is a utility argument that is so simple that even a monkey can understand it. What is wrong with you people? And every year, hundreds of people get their legs cut off again, every year after year. And they're like, what? Okay, we'll make them gorier. We need to make it, like, they're not getting the message. And these people made this stupid cartoon in which they socially shamed you for standing on the tracks. That's how they did it. They said, they made this list of really stupid ways to die, like putting your head in a beehive, right? And you pull it out, and the guy's swollen up, and he falls over dead, right? And then in the chorus, all the dead people dance like zombies. It is hilarious. There's an awesome video. And in the end, they they cap it off with these morons reaching for a balloon, and they fall across the track and get run over and cut in half, right? Like, the only thing stupider than putting your head in this is standing on the tracks. It's a great
Actually,
genius.
by the show of hands, who's seen the video? Dumb Ways to Die.
Yeah, a few of you, right? Yeah. It's an awesome video. You can't miss it. It's just brilliant. So, okay, so I'm going to bring it around to what I actually work on here, which is cognitive-based therapy for teens, especially, like I said, internalizing males. Cognitive-based therapy is possibly more controversial in this room than I might have imagined, but it is the best we've got. Okay, it's not great. No, nobody's saying it's great. It's just the best we've got for evidence-based, broadly effective ways to help teens prevent depression, anxiety, suicide, various really severe outcomes that, like, if left untreated, eventually end up in big social problems, big personal problems, whatever. So,
Can you just rewind on what it was that is that, just that last 1 minute?
yep. Say that again, or yeah. So the interventions I generally I'm interested in right now, all are based on the cognitive behavioral therapy. So CBT is the initials that we use, and that's if you look in the literature for, like, reviews of what actually works when you try to work with teens, if you can get them to sit down and engage, what actually has any kind of effect on their outcomes. Usually it's cognitive behavioral therapy. That's sort of the main. There's other theories, interpersonal therapy and other ones. It's not the only one, but it's sort of the big, everyone's like, yeah, it's that, right? And it's usually delivered in a clinical context with a psychologist, and you work through various biases in your thinking. So I'll give you some examples here. Did that get at it? Yeah, okay. So, an example of a cognitive behavioral therapy aim is to dispel the idea that feeling stuck means you are stuck, okay? So if you are frustrated and feeling stuck, that's only a feeling. You can solve problems. You shouldn't get hung up on the fact that you're feeling that way. You should continue to look for solutions. So, I ask for help when I'm stuck. Reaching out for help is another principle that you teach. If you do that, regardless of what your problem is, you're probably going to get good results. So, So how do you fit that in the mechanic of a game? Well, here we have Temple Run, but it's going slow and feels depressing. So this endless runner game, which is this very, very successful commercial genre, okay? Like, it's one of the top downloaded apps in almost every app store is some kind of endless runner. Subway Surfers, endless Temple Run. So we take that game and we modify it so that you run out of coins and you feel trapped and you feel hopeless and there's nothing more you can do. And the game cues it with miserable music and making you slower and just like, you feel the actual feelings of being stuck. We don't tell you, when you feel stuck, you should da-da-da. No, we don't tell you anything. You just play this game and you get feeling stuck. And then we give you choices to make to get yourself unstuck. And those choices all come with a cost and a benefit, like everything in a game. Games are a series of interesting choices. And in this case, the cost is that a monster comes right behind you and makes your problems worse immediately. And the benefit is that someone can help you. They can lay down, shortcuts in the maze or whatever. But not always, because it's a voluntary thing. Sometimes people don't help you. And we model that in our game. So we build these simplified models of how reaching out for help feels, and that it is generally a successful strategy, but not always. So that's one example of how we do it. Another one, this is Zoe Quinn, Depression Quest. A very simple mechanic. So in here, she isn't really trying to teach anything about depression or teach cognitive behavioral therapy at all. She's just trying to give you the feeling of being depressed. What's it like? What it's like is any kind of adventure game, except that most of your options are crossed off and you can't choose them because you're depressed. That's what being depressed is like, right? You know what you should do, but you just can't motivate yourself to do it, right? So here we've got like 6 options. 5 of them are just crossed out. You can only choose number 6. So you're constrained, right? It's a great mapping of depression to a game mechanic. This is the project I'm working on right now. We're trying to work with social rejection. So when people turn you down, dating, jobs, whatever, any form of social rejection you've experienced. Normally that's a crushing experience, right? It's awful. But here we're forming it into a puzzle. And by doing so, we're reframing social rejection as an interesting problem versus a soul-destroying, identity-crushing experience. And specifically addressing those 5 points and specific mechanics that address each of those points. Right, I'm almost done. So, coerced play, okay? This is one of the biggest sins in this area. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. When you're in a setting where you have teens under your thumb, jail, school, even some kind of hospital settings, that is not play. And so you have to work extra hard to make a play space within that coerced setting. In a classroom, they have identity, there's a huge number of freedoms that they are cost. So it's a totally different design problem than when they are choosing to play, okay? Whenever you're building any of these kind of interventions, I use these 3 success criteria. Is it effective? Is it engaging? Meaning once you're playing it, that you want to keep playing it. And is it sustainable? Which is generally to do with app discovery. Can they find it? When they find it, do they buy it? And that will generate the money that allows the project to live. I mean, that's not the only source, but that's an important one. The other really big high-level point is that, design, I've been talking about design, that's the tip of the iceberg of a process that lies on top of process, which lies on top of team. So if you want a good product, you start with a good team who will bring you a good process, and that will generate good design. Starting with the design, I have an idea for a health game that does X, is the wrong end. You start with a problem and you find a team. So yeah, that's it. And that's me, and I hope this starts conversations.